Alright, Beetlejuice fans, listen up. Beetlejuice Beetlejuice is coming to theaters, and guys, I am happy to report I had a good time with it, but let's dive into the meat and potatoes of this movie, guys. This follows Lydia Deetz years after the first movie, and now she is grown, has her own daughter, and is a TV personality for her ghost-seeing abilities. But in this film, she needs Beetlejuice for a special mission, and meanwhile, Beetlejuice is also running from his own past. And Lydia is dealing with the death of her father, while Justin Theroux, who plays her new boo, is trying to marry her on Halloween, several days after the funeral. Crazy little story, but a fun time indeed. Y'all, listen, we gotta talk about this because Michael Keaton back as Beetlejuice is just as zany as before. He's just as goofy, just as zany, just as crazy as the first Beetlejuice. Love having him back on screen, guys. He is just disgusting in the funniest way, and I think that he does a great job returning here. Not only him, our other returning cast members, Winona Ryder and Catherine O'Hara, are so good, and new cast member Jenna Ortega fits right in. I think the actual trio of leading women here were so good on screen together. They have great comedic timing, they have great chemistry with one another, and I found myself laughing it up, y'all, when the three of them were on screen together. Catherine O'Hara really channels the energy from her Schitt's Creek character into this role, and we didn't really get that in the first one, so I actually thought it was a welcome change to the Delia character. I think it gave her more to do, and I think that it was a really good decision on Tim Burton to make her a little bit more like that character. And then you get Lydia Deetz back. Winona's such a great actress. I love her and Jenna on screen together. There's this rift between the mother and daughter with the dad, who has unfortunately passed away. It does such a good job of creating this rift between the two of them that's believable, but has so much heart as things unfold throughout the movie. We have new cast members in this as well, including Danny DeVito and Willem Dafoe, and I must say, while Danny DeVito doesn't have a lot to do, Willem Dafoe actually is hilarious in his role. He's like this cop who was an actor in his past life, and it's actually so funny. The way he just acts like he's still an actor and like this Bond-esque type role, and he does such a funny job of bringing a little bit more to the Beetlejuice fray. Beetlejuice Beetlejuice feels like another taste for Beetlejuice fans. Just adds on to that first one, and while it's not necessarily as good as the first, it does have the laughs, some of the chuckle, the same comedy, the same really cool use of practical effects. And that's one thing I gotta compliment Burton on, is in an era where we are ruled by CGI and VFX, Tim Burton has found a way to continue putting his stamp on his films with that signature practical effects look. This guy does such a cool style, and his macabre, lower budget style really does work in the sequel as well. There are some twists and turns that the story takes that I found a little predictable, but actually helped out the story a little bit more. And again, really like the chemistry, really like Beetlejuice, really like this zany energy coming back. I like the practical effects, the sets, how hell looks, everything just looks, how the afterlife looks, everything just looks so cool, even though it's so practical. And this is such a great example of practical effects are still amazing, and I hope that other directors saw this movie or see this movie and see that, like, okay, we can still use practical effects. So very well done by Tim Burton, and just his style is all over this movie, and I think it's actually better than his last few movies. I think out of the last few, this is one of his best, so I applaud him on a bit of a comeback here with Wednesday and now Beetlejuice Beetlejuice. So let's get to the things that aren't quite good about the film, because there's a few of them, and I will say Monica Bellucci's character and that storyline with Beetlejuice, I don't necessarily think that storyline adds anything to the movie at all. I think that it just is one other mission that they have to do, and there are some problems in the film that the characters experience that get solved so quickly. Like, it's weird that there's a lot going on, but everything gets solved extremely quick. So I think that the pacing is a little rough because we go through these problems with our characters, but then everything's solved in one neat little bow pretty quickly, and I think that might take away from the movie a little bit. There's a lot going on. I kind of feel like there's 3 conflicts going on, and like 1.5 of them just have no business in the film. With a stronger central conflict, that story could have been a little tighter. The script is a little rough. I mean, there's some moments where I think they tried to get some laughs and it didn't quite get the laughs for me. So it's just not quite as funny or as zany as that first Beetlejuice, and I want to talk a little bit about that. One thing I noticed about this movie is it lacks that iconic nature of the first Beetlejuice. Now, obviously, most sequels will, but I think this is a legacy sequel that, unlike a series like Cobra Kai, which can completely revitalize the franchise and really is almost better than Karate Kid, I think here you have an example where you can feel that it's come out a lot later, and part of that is because it just isn't as iconic as that first. It just can't mimic the same nature. You know, if it maybe came out 3 years after the first one, you still have everybody around the same age, you still have the same characteristics, but this coming out so much later doesn't have these legendary moments that the first one has, and I think that's where Beetlejuice falls short. It doesn't feel as memorable, it doesn't feel as iconic, it doesn't feel as classic as that first Beetlejuice, and it's hard to mimic that. Listen, it's hard for lightning to strike twice. The first one was very lightning in a bottle, and this one is a good follow-up, but I can't quite call it lightning in a bottle. It's good, but the story is pretty packed. There's a lot going on, the pacing's off, there's one story that can be completely like cut from the film. The script is pretty rough, and there's just some scenes that I know they're trying to get that laugh out of you, and it just doesn't quite work for me, and it just doesn't have as much iconic, memorable moments as that first Beetlejuice. The first Beetlejuice, man, we've got so many iconic, memorable scenes out of that first one, and this one, again, it just serves as a good follow-up. And what I do like about it, one more thing, is that I do like that it doesn't try to be something completely different and try to reinvent the wheel and try to make all these things so different in terms of its style and its themes and settings. Like, it very much follows up that first one. It doesn't try to reinvent things. It stays in that same Beetlejuice lore and feel, and I like that. I think that's a good way to close out this review, guys. If I had to give Beetlejuice a rating, I would go a 7 out of 10. I think it's solid. I think it's got some funny moments. I think our 3 lead actresses on screen together are awesome. Michael Keaton is great as Beetlejuice. I liked Willem Dafoe's character, but there are some storylines that just could have been cut completely. The pacing is so rapid to where it's like, okay, there's so much going on, but everything's solved so quickly. So story issues, script issues, but all that aside, it is still a worthwhile follow-up to the first Beetlejuice. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments, and hey, if you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button for reviews, reactions, and more, and we'll see you next time on Geekly Goods.